Is this the one on YouTube?
Yes. All right, let me try to get my phone in here. Can you hear me clear?
I can hear you clear.
All right. Let me see something.
What did you call it? Is it on YouTube already?
Yeah, it should be. I put non-duality in the book of John.
I'll have to go onto your page and see if I can get it up.
Now, see, I have on my phone a video, like
Aha,
I downloaded an app where you can
cool. Yeah,
download,
I see it on there.
you see it?
Yeah, yeah.
I downloaded a video where you could YouTube, or you can download YouTube videos off of people's channel. I got that app on my phone. So if you would have did it, I could have took the video off of your page and put uploaded it to mine.
Ah, cool. So like, that's what I probably how I would get the video onto my one as well. Because like, and then the people that are looking at my page, they'll see your page, and then it's more
Exactly.
publicity for us both.
Vice versa.
So,
Yeah.
shall we talk a bit about like how we're going to do this? Because like a bit about format.
Yeah. I mean, it really doesn't matter. I mean, yeah. How do you want to go about it? Because I know
I
people
was
probably don't. You think people want to sit through a whole reading of like you said, short and sweet is what people.
people like. But I
Yes.
mean, in this kind of thing, this is more of a kind of. I think when you're doing these kind of hangouts, it doesn't matter so much about the length, and it's like because otherwise we're just because like a lot of the good things they come out as we get into flow, and then what we could do is do the video, have it as one big thing, and then also edit the video and cut out the bits that were pretty cool and like get short little sweet statements out of it.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And then like the kind of format we could do, it's not we just read like often in a conversation there's like a kind of flow and then it like that ebbs and it kind of flows or whatever. When it goes a
Hmm.
bit silent, we just return to the text and carry on reading it until something pops up and we get an idea or an insight, and then we follow that path down, and then do it like that.
Okay, sounds good.
Cool. Do you want to do you want to read from the version of the Bible I use the most, or
Yeah,
do
we
you have
can
a
go.
preference?
Yeah, we can go with your version.
Yeah, because like the concordant literal version, the reason why I like it, I mean, I told you this yesterday, but this is for people listening to this, is the problem with a lot of other translations, especially the King James version, which a lot of people almost idolize, is that they'll often use. In one case, there's 40 different English words used for one Greek or one Hebrew word, and those words often have a contradictory meaning. And there's often words in the Greek or Hebrew that's that like say the word that we translate as cursed and blessed. In Hebrew, it's the same word in both cases. And so what the concordant literal translation does is they try to use as small an amount of words as possible for each Greek or Hebrew word, and they try and make sure that there's no that the words don't have contradictory meanings,
Hmm.
so that you can get to what was said.
Perfect.
Cool. So shall we crack on?
Go ahead.
Okay. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was toward God, and God was the Word. This was in the beginning toward God. All came into being through it, and apart from it, not even one thing came into being which has come into being.
All
In
right,
it was
hold on.
life.
Hold on. Stop right there. Now, what is your understanding of that?
I'm beginning to think that the Word is like the system of kind of separation, because it
Hmm.
talks about a bit later on about how the world came from it. And the world
Hmm.
is like this system of many different things. And so it's saying that that system of many different things and God are the same thing.
Okay, I can see that.
Yeah, I mean the word there is logos, isn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Um,
Logos.
which is where we get logic from.
Hmm. Okay, you can keep
Yeah,
going. I agree with that.
yeah. I mean already it's non-dual, isn't it? It's
Exactly.
establishing a duality between God and the Word, and then it's
Hmm.
saying that this duality is actually one.
One. Yep.
Mm. In it was life, and the life was the light of men. And the light is appearing in the darkness, and the darkness grasped it not. There came to be a man, commissioned by God. His name was John. This one came for a testimony. Oh, going back a bit, where it says, in it was life, and the life was the light of men, and the light is appearing in the darkness, and the darkness grasped it not. I think that's referring to Jesus's incarnation, or the Logos's incarnation. And the darkness is a Jewish kind of world system. Well, that's one interpretation I've heard of it.
Yeah. Now my interpretation of the beginning from where we started to now is that I see in the beginning was the word, right? And you said that was basically because the word is logos, or I don't have the definition of it with me, but basically intellect. But what I see is like you said, the word was with God, right? And I believe that word, for instance, me and you could probably understand that there is no separation from God and every sort of individual focused light that shines upon the earth, meaning every individual consciousness. So when it says God, I see God as a totality, and the word is just individual consciousnesses, right? Or
Yeah. Or
or the
and
separation.
individual consciousness, or a single, like the first
Yeah,
individual consciousness.
exactly.
And so in the beginning was God, kind
Yeah,
of, and he's undifferentiated. He's
yeah.
kind of, he might be aware, but there was nothing to be aware of.
Oh,
So
okay.
and not even kind of darkness. It would just have been, because that's a something. It would have,
Mm-hmm.
or it no, it wouldn't have been aware. It would have. To use an analogy of the eye, it's like the eye before the eyelid opens up, or even before that, there was nothing, and we can't grasp that. We can't
Exactly.
get to that. And
Exactly.
then that God
And so,
then
mm-hmm,
created a kind of intellect, or an intellect just occurred. It just happened, and
mm-hmm,
that was the first mind.
exactly. And so it says, because it says in verse 4, life was in him, and that life was the light of men, right?
And as you said in
Life
one
was,
of your videos, light is consciousness.
exactly, is the
Mm.
consciousness. And so, again, that's what I'm trying to go back to, is that I don't see it, even though it seems separate, like it seems everybody and everything has a different conscious, from a plant to a human, or from even from a mineral, or from an atom to a human. The thing is, like you said, this separation, it only appears to be. But like I said in the beginning, even this word is God. So all these different, how can I put it?
I mean, in a sense, the function of Jesus, according to the Bible, is to reconcile the world to God.
Exactly. And so even a lot of Christians will say this word is Jesus,
Mm.
and
And it's like, so God initiates this separation.
mhm,
He starts pushing himself away from himself, and as time goes on, the separation becomes more and more intense, more and more convincing, and difficult to escape from. And the point at which it's at its highest intensity was in this reading of the Bible, was when Jesus was crucified,
mhm,
and then he's resurrected, and he's in the world reconciling the separation back to God.
yes,
I mean, that's a non-dualistic idea. I mean, in some non-dualistic schools, they have it as there's a kind of progression. There's a narrative going on. So God
mhm,
separates himself from himself, and then he brings himself back into himself.
exactly. Yeah, and that's what I see. Actually, the beginning of the separation is occurring right here in John. Life was in him, and that life was the light of men. And that light shines in darkness, yet the darkness comprehended it not. And you specifically just said that basically you imply it to the Jewish religious and political system.
Yeah,
But
I think that's the preterist reading of that, where Jesus
okay,
comes in, and and the Jews were in, like, I mean, later on it says about how the law came through Moses, but grace and truth came through Christ.
uh-huh,
And so the Hebrews, they were under Moses.
yeah,
And when he talks to the Jews and says, "You're of your father who was a liar and a murderer from the beginning," that could refer to Abraham, who lied multiple times about his wife Sarai or Sarah to the
mhm,
like Pharaoh in that, and tried to kill his son. Or it could refer to Moses, who killed one of the Egyptians who were ripping the Hebrews. But I
mhm,
can't think of a time when but Moses lied, didn't he, about doing that? He said, "Oh, I didn't kill that guy," when the Hebrews talked to him about it. So
exactly.
it could be referring to that. But that's jumping the gun a bit. That's talking about what's to come.
Yeah, but yeah, how I see it is just darkness, because things of the world or any objective thing is darkness. You understand? It's not the light. The light shines upon all objective things. And so when it says uh
Not just upon, but through.
through, and not even through, because these words are still show to, it is those things. But
Like, it'd be like
um
if you could have a word which would say at the same time upon and through and
exactly.
is all at the same
And
time, and then yeah, that would capture it.
that would capture it. Exactly. So
And that, yeah, carry on.
so I'm saying darkness comprehended not, because like has been said, the human being searches throughout all the world to find this light. And he's searching in the world of darkness, per se, to use these words. And he'll never find that light unless he turns his mind around to see that light that shines even upon the mind. And
Yeah,
so that's what
I
that's what I get.
am the I
Hmm?
am the way, the truth, and the life. I am.
I
And you
am.
turn back, and then you see the flip side of the coin. They're focusing. It's like I think the word spiritual
Hmm.
just means, or spirit is just what the material looks like from the inside out, and
Yep.
the word material is what the spirit looks like from the outside in.
Yeah, and that's an excellent point, because we often think of the world, the material world, as real. But even in your dreams, it seems to be a material world, but it's all made of the same stuff. You understand what I'm saying? So
Mm.
it's basically what you're saying in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's the argument that Bishop Berkeley, he was in the empirical school of philosophy. They believe that all kind of knowledge comes from experience, and he was an empirical idealist, which I don't
Mm.
know if you come across that term idealist before.
Yeah,
But
idealist. Yeah,
they
opposed to
believe that
materialist, right?
well, yeah, opposed to materialism, yeah. They believe
Yeah.
that everything's kind of thought. So Bishop Berkeley, he said, if you take away from a material object everything that is thought stuff, everything you perceive, there's
Hmm.
nothing there. So even if there is
Exactly.
a material object, we never even know it or see it.
Mm. Exactly. Okay. So yeah. So that's what I perceive when it says the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness comprehends it not. So
Because it's
you can.
looking at individual things, it's looking for a specific experience. So, but amongst all these multiple experiences, and really,
Exactly.
it's the whole game.
Yep. So yeah, verse 6. I mean, you can keep going.
Okay. There came to be a man commissioned by God. His name was John. This one came for a testimony, that he should be testifying concerning the light, that all should be believing through it. Not he was the light, but he came that he should be testifying concerning the light. It was the true light, which is enlightening every man coming into the world.
Okay, stop there. I think I've said this before, but I used to read over this scripture because it says basically that is the true light, which gives light to everyone who's coming into the world. I mean, this points directly to the so-called non-dual experience.
It does.
That
It
that
could,
light. Go ahead.
It could also be saying, like, I've heard the interpretation of it that like when the baby's born, it's enlightened, it's got that light already, and then it's naughty and it loses it, which could well be true. I think that's what the baby does, and it has to lose it, and it has to leave the Garden of Eden, so to speak, so
Uh-huh.
that it can like start communicating with the other kind of apparent separatenesses, and
Exactly.
develop those tools. And then again, if it grows properly, or if it's one of the lucky ones, one of the elected ones, that this god or whatever or reality chooses, I kind of hesitate to use that word, to allow into the secret, then
Uh-huh.
but then it's enlightening that as well. That's talking about the enlightenment experience that happens after you've like gone out from the garden of Eden, and then you go into the realm of sin and death. Where everything's futility, everything is vanity, and it's because
Hmm.
you're looking for a purpose, and that's because vanity and futility is like a pointless activity. And
Exactly.
so the baby's first of all there, and it's like, Alan Watts, he talks about how the baby's born and everything's just like, whoa. And then it gets to the point where, but what's the point of that? That's a bit shit, and it's a bit crap. And and
Exactly.
then and then the enlightenment experience, as it says in another part, it says, "Behold, I make all things new," is when all of a
Hmm.
sudden you're like, it's this, and it's for no
Exactly.
purpose, for no point. It's just this.
Yeah. Yeah, we can keep going.
Cool. In the world he was, and the world came into being through him, and the world knew him not. To his own he came, and those who are his own accepted him not. Yet whoever obtained him, to them he gives the right to become children of God, to those who are believing in his name, who were begotten, not of bloods, neither of the will of the flesh, neither of the will of a man, but of God.
Yes, and that right there is beautiful because a lot of the Jews, especially in John 8, I believe, they were like, we are of the seed of Abraham. Abraham is our father. Because they're looking specifically, as it says here, who were not born of the blood or of the will of the flesh or of the will of
But
man,
of the
but of
will of
God.
God.
Yeah. And so when you see and come in union with God, um, it's being born again. It's like you are no longer that being you thought you were, even though that being is still around. You know what I'm saying? And it's only
Yeah,
a
and
being. Go ahead.
not only that, it says, to those who are believing in his name. And what's
Uh,
his name? It's Yahweh, isn't it? It is,
yeah.
I am that I am.
Hmm.
And again, I can say that of myself, and you can say that of yourself.
Exactly.
Ultimately, I ask you a question. I ask you, who are you? And you might say, oh, I'm Brandon. And I'll
Hmm.
be like, what? You're just a sound you make with your mouth. you know
Exactly.
I'm a worker, I'm this, I'm that. They're just all activities.
Exactly.
Eventually you come back to the ultimate mystery. All you can say is that I am, and that's it.
Exactly. Yep. Before you are something, you just are.
Yeah, and that's why, but I mean, Jesus's name was meant to be Yehoshua or something like that, and that
Hmm.
just meant I am saves.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So being born of God, and people, you know, I don't think they truly understand what being born again signifies. Because when I was reading the Bible, I thought, man, since I'm reading the Bible, I'm born again. You understand what I'm saying? And that's what most Christians believe.
It's white
But
belief, isn't it?
yeah, it's about belief. But really, until you awaken to the knowledge of God, which is already in you, it, these sentences, especially in John, are ungraspable. Graspable.
Mm, graspable.
Yeah,
It doesn't matter, we know what you mean. And if
exactly.
people are going to go, oh, you said a word wrong, therefore what you're saying is bullshit, well, they're stupid, aren't they?
Exactly. So yeah, so this word became flesh is what we're gonna read on, and
Mm.
again,
Shall I carry on? Or do you want to?
yeah, because
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead and read that.
And the Word became flesh and tabernacles among us, and we gaze at his glory, a glory as of an only begotten from the Father, full of grace and truth. See, I just think what's a kind of game that God's playing there is not only is God a kind of trickster, he loves giving gifts. And the greatest gift he can give is himself. But before he gives you the gift, he wants to show you the gift. He wants to show you how awesome, how powerful, how magnificent it is. So he sets up this separation where you're in opposition to him, so that when you finally realize it, you're like, oh, what, that, me? Yeah, wow, you know.
That
I mean,
makes a lot
it's
of sense.
yeah, it's a pattern. It talks about it in Romans. It says, therefore God hardened Pharaoh's heart, right? And then you'll talk to the Christians about this. You'll say, look, it says God hardened Pharaoh's heart. God rose Pharaoh up so that he would. I'll try and find where
No,
that
I
was
know
actually, because
exactly what you're talking about.
yeah, and so the Christians will say, "Ah, but no, Pharaoh, he chose to harden his heart." In Exodus, it says Pharaoh chose to harden his heart first of all, and then God came in and hardened it for him because he deserved it. And it kind of has God like a fool who's messing up all the time. He wants to save the Hebrews, right? So he sends Moses to Pharaoh with the intention of saving the Hebrews. Moses goes to Pharaoh, and then Pharaoh goes, "No, no, I'm not letting him go." And then Moses goes back to God, and God's there like, "Oh, damn it, I thought that would work. No, go there now, right? Go there now and make frogs come out of the streams. Right, that'll work, that'll work. So he goes, and then it don't work, and Moses goes back to God, and God's like, oh, fucking hell, mate. And I thought this was gonna work. You know, he's a bumbling mess who kind of fails, who sins constantly. But no, what Romans is saying is that in order for Pharaoh to be a worthy opponent of God, God had to step in and strengthen and harden Pharaoh beyond the point that Pharaoh would himself, so that God could display his magnificence and his power through rescuing the Hebrews. He had to make Pharaoh really, really stubborn, and Pharaoh on his own was not strong enough to do that. And
Exactly. I mean, and yeah, and it's not even. I mean, the thing is, all the characters of life God's playing through. So it isn't like God hardened his heart. It's just, even though it says that, that's that's the
like
way Pharaoh.
you
Hmm?
can talk using the language of separateness, because once you understand what separateness is, and how
Exactly.
it's an illusion, you can still, I mean, like when I first had my first enlightenment experience, I went through a week where I couldn't say I, and it was damn hard talking to people, and
Exactly.
it's 'cause I thought it was wrong or something like that, but it's still talk normally, you know.
Exactly. Yeah, you still talk normally. Exactly. So people can understand. But then again, yeah, I mean, basically, like you said, he's hardening Pharaoh's heart, and people use that for, he, like you said, he had his own free will. They'll just run to that scripture where it says, we'll choose life or death. When you say
Yeah, choose you this day.
exactly, but it shows you that God is in control of it. That scripture shows that God is the one in control, even of
Yeah,
Pharaoh.
definitely.
So
Yeah, and then Paul will go. You will say then to me, well, why doth God still find fault for who has resisted His will? Oh, who are you to argue against Him who made you? But basically, Paul's response to that is, well, he's God. He can do what the hell he wants.
exactly, in Romans
Yeah.
9, I know what you're talking about.
Shall I carry on?
Yes, carry on.
John is testifying concerning him, and has cried, saying, "This was he of whom I said, He who is coming after me, he has come to be in front of me. For he was first before me. For of that which fills him we all obtained, and grace for grace. For the law through Moses was given, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ." And that means, right, that if grace and truth came through Jesus Christ, the truth was not in the law. Moses did not give
Exactly.
you the truth. He
Exactly.
was the father of lies.
Yeah. That's a perfect example. That's what I got from it when I just read it. But
Hmm.
even he existed before me. You know, he's just speaking of that existed before all things.
Yeah,
And like it says in Colossians, I believe that Christ was the fullness of that. Christ displayed the fullness.
He was like the
of God.
first kind of he was God kind of showing us what unseparateness looked like in
Exactly.
full form. Because
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are going around saying, "Oh, I'm out of the illusion of separateness" and stuff like that, and I'm convinced they're still seeing from a center. But I think Jesus Christ, he was walking around on this planet, and he. I mean, actually, no, there could be people out now who are like on the level of Christ, because it talks about how that if you do, you'll do more than what I do, kind of thing.
Exactly.
But he for him the heavens were open all the time. He had
Hmm.
direct access to the truth all the time. He never kind of skipped in and out of it. He was always it.
Exactly. And the thing, yeah, I understand exactly what you're saying,
Mm.
because it's not that we're not always it, because you always are that, but
Yeah,
sometimes you fall into the play, or
yeah,
people who call themselves teachers, fall into the play of life. So,
yeah. And the
exactly.
guru game is kind of trying to get people to either lie about their own experience. And it's
Uh-huh.
like, I mean, some of them will say, like, you like when you first start getting into this stuff, you'll start telling people that are suffering and troubled, "Oh, you're fine as you are. It's absolutely okay," and that. But for them,
Exactly.
it's not. It's not okay. And they might turn around to you and say, "Oh, yeah, it is actually okay." But then they go home and they're alone. They're sad. They're depressed. It's still not okay. They've got to get somewhere.
Exactly. Yep, I agree. So yeah, we could carry on.
Yep. And this is the testimony of John when the Jews of Jerusalem dispatched to him priests
Hold
and
on, hold
Levites.
on, hold on. I don't think you read 18.
Aha. For the law through Moses was given, grace and truth came through Jesus Christ. God no one has ever seen. The only begotten God, who is in the bosom of the Father, he unfolds him.
Hmm. Exactly. No one has ever seen God.
It's because all we see is things, and we
Exactly.
always see. I mean, in a sense, God's the whole universe, and I don't know about you, but I'm
Uh,
yet to get a close-up view of Alpha Centauri. You know, a star that's a couple of billion light years away, and
yeah.
yeah, and so I mean, in a sense, these bodies, the experience we're having now, it's like the experience of our eyeballs. And like I said to you in a message the other day that our experience is like one eyeball saying to the other eyeball, "I don't see what you see."
Exactly. Yeah, I remember that.
But we know that we're connected to it all because our thoughts and everything we experience comes from this nothing and goes into this nothing, and we
Uh-huh.
don't and there's this kind of sense that if I'm in control of it, if I was truly separate, then I would be able to trace where my thoughts come from. I would be able to tell their story, but I can't. That I can trace
Exactly.
them only so far back. I can say this thought came because of this thought, but you go back and there's this silence where it just pops up. It was inspired into us.
Exactly. And that's where all thoughts come from, is from that silence, and that's where they dive back into. I don't see
Yeah.
see I don't see life as, I mean, I guess you can look at a story as continuous, but I think Alan Watts gave a good analogy one time where he was talking about a snake. If you're looking through a hole of a fence, right, and you see a snake pass by that hole in the fence, you would think, well, the head caused the neck caused the tail. You would think all these things cause. That's how people look at the world, as everything causes something, but it's all one thing. It's not a causation per se. You understand what I'm
Yeah.
saying? The head
Um,
didn't cause the tail.
yeah, Schopenhauer, he's famous for being a pessimistic philosopher. He
Hmm.
said that like he wrote and it was thinking after Kant, and Kant came up with these categories. He says that you've got the world as it is, or the world in itself, and then you've got the world as we perceive it. And he says we can't get from the world as we perceive it to the world as it is because we have these categories, like these little boxes that we put all of experience into, and they're a product of our mind.
Exactly.
And Schopenhauer says that the two fundamental boxes that we put stuff into is time and space. And it's
Hmm.
only in time and space that you can have separate like so in space you can have many separate things existing at once, and in time you can have one thing becoming many different things.
Exactly.
So that's a fundamental category we have, and we can't get outside of that box whilst we're alive.
Exactly.
He called it the substance the substance this Latin thing, basically substance individuation or individuating substance.
Okay, that makes sense. As
Yeah,
far as manifested things.
yeah. And that's where the Leela is. I mean, space and time are the kind of they're a kind of nothing. They're a kind of organizational schema. And yet again, the word logos is where we get the word logic from, which is a schema, a kind of framework,
Exactly.
categories. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I like the way it uses the term here, unfolds. And that's a bit like you get this box, and you might think it's like a circle or a little square, and then you could
Uh-huh.
unfold it, and if you keep unfolding it, it will get bigger and bigger and bigger.
Uh-huh.
Not really sure if there's much in that, but anyway.
No, yeah, that was.
Shall I carry on?
Yep.
And this is the testimony of John, when the Jews of Jerusalem dispatched to him priests and Levites, that they should be inquiring of him, "Who are you?" And he avows and denies not, and avows that I am not the Christ. And they ask him again, "What are you then? Are you Elijah?" And he is saying, "I am not." John was confused there. He was deluded there, because Jesus says to Peter later on, he says, "If you want to know who this Elijah is that is coming, it was John." So
Yeah.
John was not on the level of Christ. He said that himself.
Exactly.
Um,
So I wouldn't say he's confused. I just would say that he didn't think he was Elijah, because the thing is, in order to be Elijah, he would have had to known. How can I say this? Because it's like the eyeball cannot know itself, right? But somebody could look from without and see the eyeball. You know what I'm saying? So John didn't know it was him, because he didn't know what mission he was to carry out. But Jesus knew. You understand?
Definitely, and that's it. It's kind of like I think often John was speaking from inspiration. He was just he didn't quite know what he was saying. It was just pouring through him.
Exactly.
And then when these rabbis and that came along and asked him, "Who are you?" This it would have been like a little kind of stop for him, and he wouldn't have been in flow, and he'd be like, "No, that's not me. That's not me." But yeah. And also that they were asking these questions, right, because they knew, according to the book of Daniel, that the end times were upon them. They knew that the Messiah was coming, because you had the 70 weeks of Daniel, and they end on 70 AD, exactly then. And then, but they knew before the end of it, in the last half of the last week or something. Have you heard of the 70
Exactly.
weeks of Daniel?
Yes.
Yeah, that Jesus was coming. That's why these Jews were asking them, "Are you him that we're seeking? Are you him that we're waiting for?"
Mm.
Shall I carry on?
Carry on.
And he answered, "No." No. Are you the prophet? And he answered, "No." They said then to him, "Who are you? That we may be giving an answer to those who send us. What are you saying concerning yourself?" He averred, and now he goes into flow. Now he's speaking from inspiration. "I am the voice of one imploring in the wilderness, straighten the road of the Lord," according as said Isaiah to the prophet.
Exactly, because I see right here, he's not identifying himself with anything. And when you so from his insight, he's just telling you what he is from his experience. He's just one crying in the wilderness. I'm not this, I'm
Mm.
not that. You understand? And
He
that's
said
where I think he was coming
he's
from.
calling himself a verb. He's saying, "I am the voice."
Exactly.
Yeah. And those who have been dispatched were of the Pharisees, and they asked him and said to him, "Why then are you baptizing, if you are not the Christ, neither Elijah nor the prophet?" John answered them, saying, "I am baptizing in water. Now, in the midst of you, one stood of whom you are not aware. He it is who, coming after me, has come to be in front of me, of whom I am not worthy that I should be loosing the thong of his sandal. In the other Gospels, he also says that I baptize in water, but he baptizes in fire. And
Mm-hmm.
this fire is an image of the Holy Spirit, right? And
Mm-hmm.
in Revelations, where it talks about the lake of fire, I mean, it's strange, isn't it? That the Holy Spirit is talked of as a fire. In Hebrews, it says our God is a consuming fire. And then you
Mm-hmm.
look at all the imagery of hell, it's fire.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing. The lake of
Yeah.
fire is God, and it burns. It dissolves everything. Things cannot maintain their shape in there. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, again, that's kind of if you were to take a picture of any kind or do a recording of any scene, like you go and record a mountain, and you were to speed it up really really quickly, it would be like it was on fire. It would just dissolve. It would just come up and then it would dissolve like waves, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. It's like
Yeah.
a lake of fire. Shall I carry on?
Carry on.
These things occurred in Bethany, the other side of the Jordan River, where John was baptizing. On the morrow he is observing Jesus coming toward him, and is saying, Lo, the Lamb of God, which is taking away the sin of the world. This is he, concerning whom I said, After me is coming a man who had come to be in front of me, for he was first before me, and I was not aware of him. But that he may be manifested to Israel, therefore came I, baptizing in water. Because it said of Elijah that he would turn their sons towards their fathers and the mothers towards the children. He would cause them to repent, kind of thing, which means to
Mm-hmm.
turn. And that's what John was doing.
Yeah. Even when he says, here comes a man who has surpassed me because he existed, or basically he came before me. Even in a metaphorical or metaphysical sense or allegorical sense, you could say that he symbolized as, or let's say in a non-dual way, that when he says he has come before me, although he's coming after me in your presence. You know what I'm saying? This thing that came before all things is what Christ is embodied as. You understand what I'm saying? Which is
Mm,
that silence. Let's just call it silence for the
yeah.
sake of
The visible image of the invisible God.
exactly. And that's what he means by he has come, that the one who is before me, basically, is that he is before all things. You know.
Mm. I mean, and in a sense, what he's talking about there in being a visible image of the invisible God. He says, like, there was that serpent that Moses put up on his staff in the wilderness when all the
Yeah.
Hebrews were ill, and everybody that looked upon it were saved, were cured from their illness. And he says that I am that serpent, and all those that look to me will be cured. And it's like, what's the secret he's given? It's not any words or anything like that. It's a realization about who we are. And then
Exactly.
when we realize that we're everything and that there is no good and bad, really, because that's where grace and truth comes in,
Mm-hmm.
we realize that there's a Zen tale. There's this guy, a Zen master. He says that he realized enlightenment, or he awoke when he's waiting in line at a butcher's, and there's a man in front of him who was saying to the butcher, "I want your best cut of beef," and the butcher was going, "They're all the best," and he's like, "No,
Yeah.
no, no, I want the best cut of beef," you know. And that's what the realization of the fakeness of the law of good and bad brings you to, that all experience is the best, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and John testifies, saying that I have gazed upon the Spirit, descending as a dove out of heaven, and it remains on him. And I was not aware of him, but he who sends me to be baptizing in water, that one said to me, On whomever you may be perceiving the Spirit descending and remaining on him, this is he who is baptizing in Holy Spirit. And I have seen and have testified that this one is the Son of God. So I think John would have had like his internal monologue would have sometimes presented a kind of thought or word that was different to all other kind of thoughts he had, and it would tell him things.
Mm.
I mean, that's still coming from the same place,
Mm-hmm.
and and this place it's got to be intelligent, because nihilo ex nihil, nothing comes from nothing. You can't get
Yeah.
intelligence from non-intelligence.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we are. I mean, it isn't even an intuition. It's just like he said. He knew. Like you just know when you know the one. I mean, it's like just a knowing. I don't. It's hard to explain,
Right?
and
Yeah,
I think that's what. Go
there
ahead.
might be an experience that some people have, which is totally different to other people's experiences, and that
Yeah.
would be incommunicable. All you could say is "I know." Um,
Exactly.
I mean, imagine trying to tell a blind person who's never ever saw what it's like to see. Experience
Mm-hmm.
is we refer back to experience to explain and communicate things, but the experience itself, if the person you're talking to hasn't had that experience, it cannot be communicated. There's a barrier.
Exactly. That's correct.
Shall I carry on?
Yep.
On the morrow, John again stood, and two of his disciples. And looking at Jesus walking, he is saying, Lo, the Lamb of God. And the two disciples hear him speaking, and they follow Jesus. I mean, John was a brilliant guru, right? Because he was pointing the way to the truth, which for him was Jesus. And then Jesus pointed away from himself to the truth, which is I am.
Yeah.
And then there's another part where John where somebody says to him, "Oh, aren't you annoyed that all your disciples are going off to Jesus?" And he's like, "Oh, he must increase and I must decrease." You know, a good
Mm-hmm.
signpost points away from itself. Like Alan Watts says, he goes, "If I do my job well, you won't come back again," kind of
Exactly.
thing, because you'll stand on your own 2 feet.
Yeah. And that's a great point because even when he says, "I must decrease," so he can increase. There is a metaphorical message in that in order for God to increase and for you to rest as that consciousness, you know how you say people come in and out of it at sometimes, but in order to rest in that, you must decrease who you
Yeah,
believe you are. Must decrease in order for you to rest in that fully. You
start
know.
taking yourself less seriously.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You know.
and I found for me that's been a kind of uh, I've tried to do it sometimes, but if you try to decrease, it's an ego trip, and
It's
you
not gonna
increase.
work.
Yeah, yeah. There's nothing you can do, and then you rest in that knowing that there's absolutely nothing you can do.
Exactly. I mean, and that's how I think. That's how I think the increase happens is that you know there's nothing you can do.
As you said the other day, you stop fighting with yourself, and when you
Exactly. You
stop
stop.
fighting with you, yeah, everything goes well then, or
Yep.
starts to go well. Yeah. Now
Yeah.
Jesus being turned. Oh, did you have any more to say?
Nah, that was it.
Yeah. Now Jesus, being turned and gazing at them following, is saying to them, What are you seeking? Yet they said to him, Rabbi, which, being construed, is termed teacher, where art thou remaining? He is saying to them, Come and see. They came then and perceived where he is remaining, and they remained with him that day. It was about the 10th hour. Now Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter, was one of the two who hear from John and follow him. This one first is finding his own brother, Simon, and is saying to him, We have found the Messiah, which is being construed Christ. And he led him to Jesus. Looking at him, Jesus said, You are Simon, the son of John. You shall be called Cephas, which is being translated Peter. On the morrow, he wants to come away into Galilee, and he is finding Philip. And Jesus is saying to him, Follow me. Now Philip was from Bethsaida, the city of Andrew and Peter. Philip is finding Nathanael and is saying to him, Him of whom Moses writes in the law and the prophets have we found, Jesus, a son of Joseph from Nazareth. And Nathanael said to him, Can anything good be out of Nazareth? Philip is saying to him, Come and see. Jesus perceived Nathanael coming toward him, and is saying concerning him, Lo, truly an Israelite in whom there is no guile. Nathanael was saying to him, Whence do you know me? Jesus answered and said to him, Before Philip summons you, when you were under the fig tree, I perceived you. Nathanael answered and is saying to him, Rabbi, thou art the Son of God, thou art the King of Israel. Jesus answered and said to him, Seeing that I said to you that I perceived you underneath the fig tree, are you believing? Greater things than these should you be seeing. And he is saying to him, Verily, verily, I am saying to you, henceforth you shall be seeing heaven opened up and the messengers of God ascending and descending on the Son of Mankind. I mean, this is an awesome kind of. Jesus was a bloody marvelous man, right? Because Nathaniel said this really nasty thing about Jesus. What from Nazareth? You know,
Exactly.
are you having me on, mate? Are you have what from shitty Nazareth? Are you sure it ain't from Jerusalem?
Uh-huh.
And then Jesus' response is, "Oh no, you know, truly an Israelite in whom is no guile, no hiding, no kind of deceiving."
Uh-huh.
And then he gives him a great old gift, doesn't he? He goes, "Oh, you're going to see marvelous things, Nathan. You're shocked, right? You're amazed, are you? And you believe me because I just told you what you were doing a while ago. Oh, you're going to see some
Exactly.
bloody awesome stuff, mate."
Yeah, that is amazing. Uh.
And on
So
the, shall I carry on?
yeah. Well, that's
Yeah,
the end of chapter 1. So
yeah. And on the third day, a wedding occurred in Cana of Galilee. I mean, if you want, how long's the video been going on for now? Shall we just keep going and then do this, separate it like in editing later?
yeah, however
Yeah,
you want to do it. We can just keep going till we're tired, and then you
cool,
know
man, cool. Well, I'm gonna go to the toilet quickly.
you got to go. Okay, that's fine.
I gotta go and pee.
Okay.
I'm back.
All right. Trying to
Yep.
send me an invite so I
It's my face and that appearing on the YouTube vid as well. Like, you seeing my face?
huh?
Am I sending a video over?
Yeah, I can see your face.
Cool.
Right now, I'm just trying to be able to use my phone instead of my laptop because I hear a little breakup when we talk at times. So
Hmm.
that's probably why you can't see my face.
That's cool. Shall I carry on?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And on the third day, a wedding occurred in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Now Jesus also was called to the wedding, and his disciples. And at their being in want of wine, the mother of Jesus is saying to him, They have no wine. And Jesus is saying to her, What is it to me and to thee, woman? Not as yet is my hour arriving. So Jesus got pissed off sometimes. He would get a bit irritable. He's
Yeah,
a
and that's
normal
why
man.
sometimes I think sometimes you know, although the fullness of God is in him, sometimes the character plays. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah. And also, I mean, imagine how frustrating it would be. You know this, and it's so simple to you, and you're telling these people, and you want these people to know it, and it's like they're just not getting it. It's like, ugh.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Now, there were 6 stone water pots lying there, in accord with the cleansing of the Jews, containing 2 or 3 firkins apiece. And Jesus is saying to them, Brim fill the water pots with water. And up to the brim they filled them. And he is saying to them, Draw now, and bring to the chief of the dining room. Now they bring it. Now, as the chief of the dining room tastes the water, become wine, I was not aware whence it is. Yet the servants who have drawn the water were aware. The chief of the dining room is summoning the bridegroom and is saying to him, every man is placing the ideal wine first, and whenever they should be made drunk, then the inferior. Yet you have kept the ideal wine hitherto. I mean, this is a beautiful example of how God kind of chooses the offscouring, the inferior. So
Mm-hmm.
the rich man, who's head of the wedding kind of thing, he gets
Mm-hmm.
to have a nice glass of wine, right? A really nice glass of wine. But these servants, I mean, they must have been like, what's this Jesus guy saying? He just told me to go and bring these bottles full of water into this room and draw and give it to him. And then they do
Uh-huh.
it, and then they give the guy this thing, and they're thinking, oh, he's going to be well annoyed. And he's like, it's really nice wine. And so they get to perceive a miracle. They get to see this wondrous thing, and they're just the servants.
Exactly.
Yeah, he chooses the lowly to put to shame the high.
Oh yeah, definitely.
This beginning of the signs Jesus does in Cana of Galilee and manifests his glory, and his disciples believe in him. After this, he descended into Capernaum, he and his mother, and his brothers and disciples, and there they remain not many days. And near was the Passover of the Jews, and Jesus went up into Jerusalem. And he found in the sanctuary those selling oxen and sheep and doves, and the money changers sitting. And, making a whip out of ropes, he cast all out of the sanctuary, both the sheep and the oxen. And he pours out the change of the brokers, and overturns the tables. And
Oh,
to those selling doves.
yeah, let me just give an example there because a lot of people think because when you come to the non-dual experience, so we'll just call it God right now for the sake of we're reading a Christian book. And when you come into the knowledge of God, God is love, right? And so people from their own perspective perceive love differently. People think love is just all soft and cuddly at times, you understand? But love comes in many forms, you understand? So when Jesus ties up these cords to whip these basically these temple schemers out of the I mean these money changers out of the temple, people who believe Jesus is a soft cuddly person can't comprehend that.
No, I
But
mean,
love, like I said, love comes in many forms. Like we say, the whole world is held in love. You understand?
mm,
And you
and,
see
and, and,
many forms
and it
in
produces the evil and the good.
exactly. You know, and like you said, what one calls evil, like that saying, one man's trash is another man's treasure. One man's evil is another man's good. You know, it's the
Hmm.
same concept.
I mean, I love that part where Jesus is just going nuts in the temple. I kind of my dad and a lot of my family when I had some of the enlightenment experiences, and I was in that state, they would say I got too intense, and
They would say what? I'm sorry, you
I
broke
got
up.
I got too intense.
Oh,
That
okay.
I would be pointing out. I mean, I couldn't help it. I was just pointing out the kind of stupidities of what a lot of them were doing. Like saying my dad would criticize my mum's weight, and he'd been doing that for like 5 6 years, and it hadn't made any difference. And I would talk about the folly of man in persisting in doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Hmm.
But really, that's just because we got this little inside us that's not rational,
Exactly.
and it's very
Hmm.
difficult to ignore it.
Exactly.
Mm. And it shows that he didn't like kind of capitalism, in my opinion. I mean, I'm a socialist. I'm up for going to the rich people's houses with pitchforks and torches and burning them alive just to get
Trust
your
me.
system better.
Trust me. I understand what you were saying. I was a communist Bible believer, so I use this verse a lot for
Mm.
capitalists to
Well,
show the dichotomy between capitalism and communism.
yeah, and there's also the bit where he says he's selling doves, and I've heard an interpretation of that. They were kind of some Christians say that they was trying to sell peace, but really doves were just one of the main offerings for the temple. So they would
Exactly.
try to like make it so that there was a pay gate in order for them to get forgiveness. Um, should I carry on?
Yep.
And to those selling doves, he said, "Take these away hence, and do not be making my father's house a house for a merchant's store." Now his disciples are reminded that it is written, "The zeal of thy house will be devouring me." Um, in a sense, the father's house is the whole world, so that's how you can be communistic about that. And the zeal of thy house is like the zeal of the Jews. The Jews were zealous for their religion, and it ended up by making them kill Jesus. So that could be
Exactly.
what that means.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews then answered and said to him, "What sign are you showing us, seeing that you are doing these things?" Jesus answered and said to them, "Raise this temple, and in 3 days I will raise it up." The Jews then said, "In 46 years was this temple built, and you will be raising it up in 3 days?" Yet he said it concerning the temple of his body. When then he was roused from among the dead, his disciples are reminded that he said this, and they believe the scripture and the word which Jesus said. Now, then later on in the Bible, it talks of the believer's body, the normal person's body, as a temple
Mm-hmm.
in which resides the Spirit of God. We are vessels, and
Exactly.
we have this treasure in earthen vessels. So that I can't remember how the quote actually went, but we have it in these earthen kind of breakable vessels. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, in the Romans chapter 9 we were talking about earlier, it says, "For what if God out of one lump of clay decides to make two vessels, one for wrath and dishonor, and one for glory and grace?" And I think that that kind of refers to the kind of growth process that we each go through. So we go through, we kind of go through a stage where we hate ourselves, and we see everything as being against us. The poor little me phase, as I call it, and that's a vessel created for dishonor and wrath. And then that kind of dies, that image of yourself, and then you start loving yourself, and that's when
Mm-hmm.
you become a vessel for honor and glory and grace.
Yep. Yep.
Now, as he was in Jerusalem at the Passover in the first, oh, and also in this case, Jesus was being tricksy there, right? He was being deliberately tricksy. He was in the
Mm-hmm.
temple. The Jews were in the temple. So when he says raise his temple, they're going to think about the actual physical, like the Solomon temple. Although that wasn't the Solomon temple, that was a temple made by Ezra and that. But so he was deliberately deceiving them. And when his disciples came to him in another gospel, and they say to him, "Jesus, why do you talk in parables?" The church in that says it's to make the truth clear, but Jesus says, "No, I speak in parables so that hearing they may hear but not understand, and perceiving they may perceive but not see." And he refers to a quote in Isaiah where Isaiah is given his commission, and it says
Mm-hmm.
that same thing, that to hearing they may hear but not understand. So what Isaiah was doing and what Jesus is doing is they were deluding and tricking the Jews so that the destruction would occur, so that they would get the comeuppance.
Yep.
I mean, it says it quite plainly. I mean, if you go to that part, because he says, and it even says at the end of that, "Unless they understand with their ears and perceive with their heart and turn to me and be saved." That's why he
Exactly.
spoke in parables.
Uh-huh.
He was trying to trip them up. God's a tricksy bastard. Um, Now, as he was in Jerusalem at the Passover in the festival, many believe in his name, beholding his signs which he did. Yet Jesus himself did not entrust himself to them, because of his knowing all men. For he had no need that anyone should be testifying concerning mankind, for he knew what was in mankind, because he was a
Mhm.
man. He is
Exactly.
like us. He knew us.
Mm-hmm.
And they would be wanting him to solve all his problems and stuff like that. But he came to kind of manifest the law in physical form, and then to as a lamb, and then to have that law nailed to the cross, to put the final seal on the fate of the law.
Exactly. And like you said in Luke, he came, as he quoted Isaiah 61, he came to um, unbind the bound. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Heal the
yeah,
brokenhearted. All these things.
And that's what the law is. And that's
Exactly.
what the law makes of people. Now, there was a man of the Pharisees. Oh, this is a beautiful bit, this is. Now, there was a man of the Pharisees, Nicodemus his name, a chief of the Jews. This one came to him by night and said to him, Rabbi, we are aware that thou art a teacher come from God, for no one can be doing these signs which thou art doing, if God should not be with him. Jesus answered and said to him, Verily, verily, I am saying to you, if anyone should not be begotten anew, he cannot perceive the kingdom of God. Nicodemus is saying to him, how can a man, being a veteran, be begotten? He cannot be entering into the womb of his mother a second time and be
Hold up.
begotten.
Yeah. And so I love what's about to come up, but the reason anybody who reads the Bible and has not experienced
Being
God
born
personally,
again or enlightenment.
being born again, cannot understand it. So I understand perfectly why Nicodemus cannot, because
Yeah, you'll get that.
I never understood it. The 6-7 years that I studied the Bible daily, I'm talking about hours on end. I'm studying the Bible. I could never understand what being born again was. I thought it just meant because I'm a Christian. You know, most Christians say I'm a born again Christian because I go to church. You know, you have a urge to desire God, but that still is not being born again.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying?
I kind of understood it in a sense before I had that experience that he was saying that you were kind of maybe I kind of had a couple of hypotheses, you know, like that you would start experiencing life differently, or that you would change, or that the all things would become new kind of thing, that you would enter into a different realm. That but I mean it's quite clear that he's being allegorical there. But
Exactly.
until you understand, until you go through it, until you have that experience where all things are new,
Mm,
it makes no sense.
exactly.
Mm. And then Jesus answered, Verily, verily, I am saying to you, if anyone should not be begotten of water and of spirit, he cannot be entering into the kingdom of God. That
Oh,
which is begotten.
okay. Well, you skipped the verse before that, but that's all right.
Was there something you wanted to say?
Oh no, you did read that. You did read that. I'm sorry.
Okay,
Go ahead.
that's okay. That which is begotten by the flesh is flesh, and that which is begotten by the spirit is spirit. And here again, I think what it means by flesh is to be lawfully minded, not fleshly minded. Like the church has perverted that into thinking it's all about sex and stuff like that. I don't think it's to do with that at all. It's just to be lawfully minded, and to be dead. That's what the flesh is. You should not, and that which is begotten by the spirit is spirit. You should not be marveling that I said to you, you must be begotten anew. The blast is blowing where it wills, and the sound of it you are hearing, but you are not aware whence it is coming and where it is going. Thus is everyone who is begotten by the water and the Spirit. And that's spontaneity.
Exactly.
And in a sense, we come into the world being that. You know, it's
Hmm.
spontaneous. There's no thought before it, and then we go into the law. We eat of the not tree of knowledge of good and evil, which is the law, where we separate things into good and bad. I like this. I don't like that.
Hmm.
And then we go into the kind of mind of second guessing ourselves and try to like plan out our steps before we do it. Like before this video, and I was quite anxious, and in my head I was kind of thinking, "Oh, what am I going to say? What will I have to say?" I wasn't trusting my mind to do its job. And then,
Exactly.
I mean, and Sue, I like you. I like talking to you, and it is calming, and we get and it gets easier.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah,
and so there I would have been, I was kind of in the flesh for a bit there, and I was thinking I got to make myself out to be good, and then I'll say this, and that'll be marvelous, and I'll say that, and that'll be marvelous, and then I'll be trying to control the situation instead
yeah.
of just letting it flow.
Let it flow. Yeah, I try not to come in, predetermined. I just, like you said, let all your thoughts precipitate from the one that you are. You know what I'm saying? And they'll come out and they'll come to you when they come. If they don't, it wasn't meant to be said. You know, I
Yeah,
try not to.
yeah.
Yeah, it's that easy.
It's really trusting it. It's like sometimes you'll be saying something, and I'll have loads of thoughts come up, but I'll forget them. And it's like in the past, I'd have been like, "Oh, but I'll butt in," but now it's like, "Oh no, more thoughts will come. It's okay."
Exactly. You know, and that's what it is. It's trusting in that because the scripture also says, "Trust not the arm or of man." You know what I'm saying? And we're always
Yeah.
trusting in objects. Even thoughts are objects. You know, we're always
Amen.
trusting in these. That's why you have different religions and things of that nature. But no, trusting the one who gives the knowledge to the mind. You know,
Mm.
and that
He also
makes
says to his disciples. He
go
also
ahead.
says to his disciples when he's sending them out, he says, "Don't premeditate what you're going to say before you say it, because in that moment
Mhm.
you'll be given the words to say."
Exactly. Yep.
Shall I carry on?
Carry on.
Nicodemus answered and said to him, "How can these things be?" Jesus answered and said to him, "You are a teacher of Israel, and these things you do not know? Verily, verily, I am saying to you that of that which we have perceived are we speaking, and to that which we have seen are we testifying, and our testimony you are not getting. If I told you of the terrestrial and you were not believing, how shall you be believing if I should be telling you of the celestial?" So I mean,
Yes.
in that whole thing there, he's telling us of the terrestrial, and he uses the word we, and he's talking about him and his disciples. So his
Mhm.
disciples weren't just talking about what Jesus had told them. Jesus had shown them, and he has shown them their own experience
Exactly.
of being born of the water and spirit, saying that you're already born of the water and spirit. Everybody is,
Mhm.
but you put on this fleshly mind of the law,
Mhm.
and then you stutter and you're not spontaneous, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And so and then he's saying this is like a rabbi, a master. It says earlier on, a chief of the Jews, one of the learned
Mhm.
men, and he's saying, "What, you don't understand these things?" And I
Exactly.
get that kind of sense when you go to church and you talk to these people, and it's like, you don't understand these basic things. You rest on hearsay, on just what you rest on believing in stuff you don't even understand, and you know you don't understand it. You're just because the Bible says so, kind of thing.
Mhm.
And yet you've got this massive congregation and you're heading a church.
Exactly. And that's the same thing when he says this. He says, "I assure you, we speak what we know, not what we've heard, what we've read, but knowing comes through experience." You could either know about something by reading it. You know, you can know about God by reading the Bible, but you can only know God through experience. And this is what he's saying. He say, "We speak what we know. We testify to what we have seen." And it's even a seeing. Seeing God is an actual seeing, not with the physical eyes though, but it's
An
knowing is seeing.
experience.
Yeah, knowing is seeing. You know what I'm saying? Like you know
Mm,
you have a thought. You don't literally see a thought, but you know you have a thought. It's the same thing. So
mm,
when he's explaining to that, I mean, because I fall into this a lot when I explain things of this magnitude to people. When I try to explain God through earthly things, like I use an analogy of, you know, because somebody will read the book and it's so dualistic, you would think everything is separate from God. And so I give the analogy of a leaf. If I wrote a book and nobody knew what a tree is, if I wrote a book about a leaf being green and a branch being brown, you would automatically think these are two different things. But a leaf doesn't come into existence without a branch. You understand? They're one in
mm-hmm.
the same, and all of that is a tree in essence. You know what I'm saying? It's only
Yeah.
one thing. But when you're reading, if you read a leaf is green, a branch is brown, you would think, and somebody could argue with a good argument, these two are different. See, a leaf is green, a branch is brown, and make a good argument that they're separate. But in actuality, in essence, is one thing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
And so, if you don't
definitely.
believe
Uh,
earthly things, if you don't believe these earthly things I'm describing to you, you won't believe the spiritual thing I'm trying to show you. You understand?
yeah, on that, no, I wouldn't say the spiritual thing there. I think often he's talking about the spirit, because you remember he said after that I told you about these terrestrial things,
Hmm.
and one of the terrestrial things he was telling them about was being begotten by the water and the spirit.
Yeah.
And then he says, and then the word celestial, which is like heavenly. And it's not this
Mm-hmm.
heaven's a separate realm. I think it means space. I think he's talking about where man's going. You know, Paul talks about the mystery that all the prophets wished that they knew. Paul had been shown, and he talked about how
Mm-hmm.
he'd been taken up to the seventh heaven, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. But yeah, again, that knowledge we can only take on hearsay. We only
Exactly.
know the terrestrial now, and then all we have is it says I think it's in Corinthians. He goes, where there are tongues they will cease, where there is knowledge it will stop, but love will remain. And so
Mm-hmm.
we just experience that love, that oneness, that acceptance of God or reality or whatever, and we have faith in that.
Exactly.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, but the spirit. I mean, it is the unknown there. The spirit is what gives birth, and it's what causes it. And then with the tree thing you were saying there, it's like because you understand the tree, you're able to generate many statements about the tree. It's like I
Mm-hmm.
understand, say, the free will philosophy or certain kind of like how certain physics work and stuff like that. And because I understand that, I can generate many statements about it, and you would be confused. You would be forgiven for thinking that these statements were all about separate things, but they're all coming from that one understanding.
Yep.
And no one has ascended into heaven except he who descends out of heaven, the Son of mankind, who is in heaven. And, according as Moses exalts a serpent in the wilderness, thus must the Son of mankind be exalted, that everyone believing on him should not be perishing, but may be having life aeonian. For thus God loves the world, so that he gives his only begotten Son, that everyone who is believing in him should not be perishing, but maybe having life aeonian. That word aeonian, in the Bible, there is not a concept or a word for forever and ever. And often they
Mm-hmm.
translated the word aeonian or aeon as forever. Aeon means age, and aeonian means of the age. And it's like an aeon, it's like the word hour. You can say you can say like what hour it is, but you can also say the word hourly. It's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
hourly, so that's how they relate to each other. So the
Okay.
concept on any level of eternal punishment or punishment forever and ever and ever is just not in there.
Yeah. And right here in the book I'm reading, it says eternal life.
Mm,
It says eternal life, which people perceive that eternal life means in time, like everlasting.
mm,
But eternal, it always is. It's not in time, something eternal. And that's what you receive when God gives his grace to you and he allows you to see him in his glory. God is what you are in essence is eternal. For you to even perceive things in time, you have to be outside of time to perceive them. And so what that is eternal. So that's what I understand him to be saying right here when whoever believes on me will have eternal life, things of that
hmm
nature. He also
It
said no
also
one had go ahead.
it also says, and this is eternal life, to know God the Father and whom He sent. And
Yeah,
it's like, what does that mean? Unless it means
exactly.
what you're saying.
Exactly. But people would think
Yeah.
it just means that if I believe on his name and I read about God, that's not exactly what
Mm.
it's saying.
Right, yeah, they think that that means that I'm going to live forever and ever and ever, but no, it is saying that it is saying the definition of eternal life is to know God the Father and Him whom He sent,
Exactly.
and it's like that means nothing unless it's to do with us.
Hmm.
So carry on.
Yep.
For God does not dispatch His Son into the world that He should be judging the world, but that the world may be saved through Him. He who is believing in him is not being judged, yet he who is not believing has been judged already, for he has not believed in the name of the only begotten Son of God. He's not believed that he's I am. And of course Jesus isn't judging the world because that's the law, that's legalistic. And people may judge us who believe this. They may say, oh, you're a bad person, you shouldn't be doing that. I don't like you or whatever. but we see where that judgment comes from. We see it comes out of silence. It comes out of nothing. So it's just a little flower that pops up and dies.
Yeah, and it says one. Anyone who believes in him is not condemned, but anyone who believes not is already condemned or judged. Even me, when I rest in this unseen being of I am, there is no judgment there.
There just is.
There just is, Judgment only comes out of the minds of men. You understand? Because the mind is what divides anyway. The nature of a mind is to divide things. That's why Adam named all the animals. That's why when they partook of this tree of knowledge of good and evil, which I perceive to be just falling into mind, you understand? They covered up themselves because all of a sudden they see themselves as separate, not one anymore. You understand? So
I think that I think before they ate the tree of knowledge of good and evil, they were already in mind because, as you said, Adam named the animals. He was already separating things,
okay, yeah.
and that kind of separation that they were doing was kind of innocent. It was just,
Uh,
that's a giraffe. That's a tree. That's this. There was no good. There was no that's bad. That's good kind of thing.
yeah.
And then they ate of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and then they started thinking, oh, I'm dirty. I'm disgusting. I'm
Hmm.
not worthy of being seen, and
Exactly.
they would start making the distinctions between everything else.
Yeah, that's a good point.
It was just a new kind of distinction, and it was a loss of innocence. It's like I've wrote in a blog before how in Holland they give children sex education at a real young age, and they teach them about
Uh-huh.
blowjobs and everything, and they've got a really low rate of teenage pregnancy and unwanted pregnancy. They've got a low rate of sexual abuse and stuff like that, and I think it's because of that, because they're taught not to see it as something disgusting and dirty, and because we kind of see it as something disgusting and dirty, we often think that by doing it to somebody, we're inflicting damage or pain upon them by doing it to them, and then the will to power gets involved with it. But it's like if you show
Yeah.
a child a sexual image, a child's going to see that as a child sees everything else as innocently. It's just two people moving against each other. Mm.
Yes, this is Brandon. Okay. Yes, I'm still looking. Is this a dispatching job? Okay. Yeah, in the field, what's the job? What's the job description for the field? Yeah, I am not. I am not experienced in that field.
I just went to the toilet quickly again.
Yes, I'm in Carthage.
Oh,
Yes, I will. Okay. Okay. Yeah, that sounds perfect. Yep. Yeah. No, what happened was I actually was born. Well, I was raised in Dallas, so I did a lot of work in Dallas. I moved up to New York and worked at General Motors for a while, and then my brother-in-law had some land out here in Carthage, so I came down here and moved out here. Yeah. Oh, yes, I understand. Okay, sounds good. All right. All right. Appreciate it. Bye bye.
Back.
Can you
Right,
hear
good
me?
news. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. I'm sorry. I had a phone call.
it's cool.
Give me 1 second. Ah, all right.
Is it
Uh,
good news?
it's just a job interview. I wouldn't call it good news.
Hmm.
All right. Where were we? Yeah, I'm sorry I had to cut you off during your talk, but they called back to back, so I was like, okay, let me see.
It's cool. It's cool. It is. We're on John 3, verse 19.
Okay.
So it's talking about how he wasn't there to judge the world,
Uh,
and then it seems to contradict itself now. Now
mm-hmm,
this is the judging. So actually, no, it doesn't. It says that he didn't send Jesus to judge the world, and then it goes, now this is the judging, that
mm-hmm,
the light has come into the world, and men love the darkness rather than the light, for their acts were wicked. For everyone who is committing bad things is hating the light, and is not coming to the light, lest his acts may be exposed. Now he who is doing the truth is coming to the light, that his acts may be made manifest, for they have been wrought in God. I mean, I think I'm living this in some of my YouTube videos, like about the law, where I just openly talk about certain things that may make you feel a bit ashamed and stuff like that.
uh-huh,
And then it's like I'm coming into the light. And for most
mm-hmm,
of my life, I would have loved to be able to just broadcast myself out there so everybody could see me.
yeah.
And because I'm sure I like myself, so I'm sure that other people might as well. And
Exactly.
um, and it says right at the end, it says that for now he who is doing the truth, and that's vital that the word truth there is coming to the light, that his acts may be made manifest, for they have been wrought in God. All acts have been wrought in God. That's the truth.
Yeah,
And then we judge ourselves by the act of hiding it away is what makes it bad.
exactly. And not only that, because hold on 1 second. Stay right there. From it says, and this is the judgment that light has come into the world, and people love darkness rather than light because of their evil deeds. So the judgment is even in darkness, because when you are in the mind frame that you're just a mind and body organism, you live in suffering. Okay. Suffering is inevitable. You live in your suffering, you think you are the sufferer. And in this, judgment comes. For you're judging yourself, you're judging others. You understand? But when you come to the light, when you turn from the darkness of objects, when you come to the light, it says, "For everyone who practices wicked things hates the light." It's because they see, like it said in John 1, they see not the light, so they play in this. They're in the play of life. You understand?
Mm.
Although it is all one, but from their own perception, they believe they're an object in the world. You
Yeah,
understand? Even though we know it's all a play of light. So these things, when you're in the world, judgments and all these things come. But anyone who lives by truth comes to the light so that his works may be shown in God. And so when you begin to rest in this light, all things, like I believe it says in, I believe it's Timothy.
all things are pure to the pure.
All things are pure to the pure. You understand? All things are light to the light.
Mm,
But to those who are deceived, is darkness. You understand what I'm saying?
yeah.
And so
We,
yeah,
it,
that's funny how you knew that.
yeah, well, we're on the same line of thought, aren't we?
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, really, what we're doing in a way is we're translating the kind of first century Greek idiom into our idiom. And an idiom
Hmm.
is just like a kind of like a, a phrase or a way of speaking that's like unique to a certain culture.
Exactly. Hmm.
And
So
it's
yeah,
like, I mean, in that sense, I mean, we still kind of make judgments, but it's not good and bad. Well, it's not good and bad in the kind of metaphysical, kind of moralistic sense anymore. It's more like I'm not going to do that because it hurts. I'm not going to do that because it hurts somebody else, and I don't like causing people pain. You know, like the
hmm,
reason that I don't rape, it isn't because I'm scared that if I do, I'll go to hell. It's because for me, the cool thing about sex is it is two people, both of them doing what they want to do, and at the same time fulfilling the other person's desire. That's beautiful. But
hmm.
and rape just takes that away. So if I have no desire to do that, and also
Exactly.
I don't have any desire to have power over people. So once you real and once you like lose power over yourself and you give up having power over yourself and you see the glory of that, you don't want it over other people. It's a burden. I mean, imagine being
Exactly.
in charge and having to tell everybody what to do. That'd be bloody
Hmm.
boring.
Exactly. That's a great point.
Shall I continue?
Yep.
And after these things came Jesus and his disciples into the land of Judea, and there he tarried with them and baptized. Now John also was baptizing in Enon near Salim, for there was much water there, and they came along and were baptized, for not as yet was John cast into jail. There occurred then a questioning of the disciples of John with a Jew concerning cleansing. And they came to John and said to him, Rabbi, he who was with you on the other side of the Jordan, to whom you have testified, lo, this one is baptizing, and all are coming to him. John answered and said, A man cannot get anything. Yeah, it's part I was saying about earlier. They're saying, Lo, this one is baptizing. The one you were talking about is baptizing, and all are coming to him. So it wasn't his disciples that said this. It was the Jews, you know, the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And
Hmm.
they're coming in trying to cause disruption. They're trying to,
Exactly.
they're thinking that John's got an ego like they have, and that he
Yeah.
cares about himself. He takes himself seriously. So like, oh yeah, yeah, let's go and kind of play the game. You know, like have you ever seen Lost?
Exactly.
Have you seen Lost?
Huh?
Have you ever seen a TV show called Lost?
Oh, have I seen the TV show? No. I think I
Well,
played the video game for a little bit, but I never watched the show.
the show's pretty deep, and in it you got this character. He's a bit of a snaky character, and they got him trapped. They got him locked up in this room, and there were two big players in the kind of main kind of group of the story,
Uh-huh.
and he plays them off of each other. He says to John, the one's called John Locke and the other one's called David Hume, or I
Uh-huh.
think I'm not sure if that's right, but it doesn't matter. But he says to John, what does he call the shots round here then? And then that
Uh-huh.
play that's a dig at John, and then it works, and John gets all kind of jealous and kind of, you know, oh, I'm in charge kind of thing, and then of course the
Mhm.
guy gets out. That's what the Pharisees are doing here.
Exactly.
Mm.
That's funny you said that because that's exactly what's happening. They're trying to pit one against the other, like John has an ego like they do.
Mm.
But yeah.
John answered and said, A man cannot get anything if it should not be given him out of heaven. I mean, it's exactly that, isn't it? It is.
Exactly.
Look, my thoughts, everything I am, is coming from the silence.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I
you
mean that
yourself.
you could
Mm,
yeah, you could just read that and that's the end of it. I mean, that ends right there. That ends all the arguments of free will, all these arguments, just with that
yeah,
one verse right there. You
yeah.
know,
There's
nothing.
another time when Jesus' disciples are arguing amongst themselves over who's greatest or something, and Jesus says,
Yeah,
"Don't you know it's God that chooses? So there's no point arguing about it. It's nothing to do with you."
exactly.
Yeah.
It's that simple. No man, I like that. No, it's in another place, but no one can receive anything unless it is given to him from heaven.
Yeah. Jesus says it to Pilate as well, doesn't he?
Yeah.
You would not have power over me unless hadn't been given to you from above.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, some people then say with that argument that, oh, we should just settle for the rulers that we have. But what they don't understand is that my intentions and my thoughts are coming from that same place. So I've got
Exactly.
equal legitimacy as that person. So if I want to go and try and dethrone somebody, I'll know if it's the will of God or not by how successful I am.
Exactly. Or maybe not as how successful you are, because the thing is, people are like, well, I should just lay and do nothing. Well, it's going to be another person by the will of God that rises up and tries to dethrone whatever
Mm,
system. So even if it's in you, that's why you can never specify somebody who knows God by the outward appearance. You understand?
mm-hmm.
Because
It's true.
don't all, not all so-called saints or whatever act the same. You know.
Yeah.
And
You could have some like Skaggard who's kind of a really poor parent and he's just in the gutter and he could really realize himself on a deep fundamental level, but
mhm.
this body's still got to go through what this body goes through.
Exactly. And what's his mission was. So yeah.
Um, you yourselves are testifying to me that I said, not I am the Christ, but that dispatched am I in front of him. He who has the bride is the bridegroom. Yet the friend of the bridegroom, who stands and is hearing him, is rejoicing with joy because of the bridegroom's voice. This, my joy, then has been fulfilled. He must be growing, yet mine is to be inferior. He's basically saying, look, mate, this guy's bloody awesome, Eddie. Yeah, let him
Hmm.
grow. I can stop speaking my drivel now and listen to the real true.
Exactly. And it's similar to the so-called ego and the one who sees the ego. You know, like we were talking about earlier when John says, he must increase and I must decrease. You know,
Mm,
the ego or who we perceive ourselves to be has to decrease in order for the spirit that sees the ego itself increases. You understand?
yeah. And
And I'm
some people they
now go ahead.
some people they're just lucky. They've got and I mean, I would say the lazy ones are the lucky ones because we just don't want to be here doing stuff, and
Exactly.
so it's kind of easy for us to decrease, and that's kind of why a lot of the people who are into this kind of trip they're quite kind of. Well, actually, no, I don't know if they're all lazy. I'm just generalizing from my own experience.
Hmm.
Hmm. So carry on,
Yep.
or did you want to finish your thought?
What did you
Yeah.
say? Did I
He
want what?
who did you want to finish your thought?
Nah, you can keep going.
Yeah. He who from above is coming is over all. He who is of the earth, and of the earth is speaking. He who is coming out of heaven is over all.
Hmm. Hold on, give me 1 second. All right. I'm sorry.
Cool, don't worry.
All right. I'm sorry about that.
That's cool.
Yeah. Can you read that over? 31, I think.
Okay. Do you notice a difference in this translation between the translation you're using?
Yeah, I noticed a difference.
Yeah, I see this translation. It just to me, it appears to be more luminous. It seems to speak it more clearly.
Uh huh.
Yeah. He who from above is coming is over all. He who is of the earth, and of the earth is speaking. He who is coming out of heaven is over all. What he has seen and hears, this he is testifying, and no one is getting his testimony. He who is getting his testimony sets his seal that God is true. For he whom God commissions is speaking God's declarations, for God is not giving the Spirit by measure.
Mm-hmm.
The Father is loving the Son and has given all into his hand. He who is believing in the Son has life, Aeonian. Yet he who is stubborn as to the Son shall not be seeing life, but the indignation of God is remaining on him. And that's
Yeah.
like, I mean, the big old gospel, as I said to you before, is where God's making everybody into God, and there's fuck all anybody can do about it.
Uh-huh.
Um, Here, the idea is that God's made man to have dominion over his creation, to be husbandman of his fields, and then that's kind of like, and we're getting a foretaste of that in what Jesus had, and maybe what could be happening in the future, because it's saying out of heaven. What that means is the sky up there, not this separate realm. It also talks about how God sits on the side of the north somewhere else, as if he was actually somewhere. So
Yeah.
and in the Old Testament, that it could have been that Jesus Christ was a kind of incarnated down here. That's where like the idea of Christ being an ascended being who incarnated on this plane kind of comes from. But I'm not quite sure about that.
Yeah. Me, I just see like heaven. I understand your interpretation as sky, but me, the term heaven here just means from from because it says the one who comes from heaven is above all. That one that's in you. Because I see heaven as just appointed to the heavenly or the highly sought after. Because most people think heaven is up. You know, they'll think when somebody dies, they'll look up, you know, to the skies and say, you know, my father's up there somewhere. But heaven is not in a direction. It's it's that which all things come from. That's my interpretation of heaven. So
Yeah,
when it says Christ comes from heaven, he has been given the fullness of heaven. So he is expressed throughout the seen world, but he comes from the unseen, which is not in any direction.
yeah.
You
And when
understand?
it kind of says on the side of the north, it could be pointing to a kind of angle that we can't get at, and it could be the point from which our awareness is springing from.
It could be.
And
Hmm.
so they talk about God resides in heaven, and so that is the eye, where the point from which we're aware.
Exactly. That's what I
Yeah,
see it as. So when it says God resides in heaven, that's where you meet him at. You understand? In that eye. That's where
yeah,
you meet God.
that makes
Yeah.
much more sense than what I was saying.
So
I think I'll go with that interpretation from now on. Yeah.
but
Uh,
yeah, like it says at the end, the one who believes in the Son has eternal life. Because again, what I equate the Son to, or Jesus or Christ, is just the individual points of consciousness. But these are just illusions of the all anyway. You know what I'm saying?
yeah, like
And so
Jesus is the Atman and God
he's
is
the
the Brahman
Atman,
kind of
yeah,
thing.
and
Yeah,
God
yeah.
is the Brahman. So when you have to go through that door, you understand, to see that you're all. You
Mm.
understand what I'm saying? And
You go through
so
the door of I.
exactly, you go through the door of I, which is the Christ. You understand?
Hmm.
So you go through the door of I to see that you are all, and then in that you see that eternal life that's always been there. You understand? Where
Yeah.
you thought you were from dust you are, and from dust you shall return. And that's what the so-called fall is that you fell into this thing that you believe you're a character in the story, and that you just have a birth and have a death. You
Mm.
understand?
Like Adam Watts talks about reincarnation. He says, like, imagine what it's like to go to sleep without waking up, and then imagine what it's like to wake up without going to sleep. It's that same old from the silence it comes and into the silence it goes,
Exactly.
and it's a silence that we really are, and that's
Hmm.
always kind of coming and going. And
Exactly.
that's our identity. We've identified with the objects, with the things, even awareness itself. We've identified with that, and sometimes awareness it comes and it goes,
Uh-huh.
and it's that silence, that deep, unspeakable, ineffable kind of silence or nothing that everything spawns from. And so
Exactly.
yeah. And so even by identifying with consciousness, you're kind of you're stopping at the eye door and you're not going through.
Exactly, and it's still an object. Even to label anything is going to be not that thing. So even when we
Mm,
say awareness and consciousness, that isn't the thing.
yeah.
So
I mean, even consciousness is defined by its content. You are never conscious of nothing. You cannot be conscious of nothing. And if you take away from your awareness everything you're aware of, then there's nothing. There's no awareness. Like, say first of all, you take away like all the colors and the shapes and stuff like that. You're left with a blank screen. But that's got to be got beyond.
you said, hold on, what was the last thing? Because you broke up. That's
So
what.
you take away all the objects that you're aware of, like all the colors, the shapes, and the
Hmm.
smells and everything, and you're left with a kind of blank screen.
Hmm.
But that's not the God. That's the kind of idol that we kind
Yeah,
of go through.
yeah, that's still, but that's still, even if there's blankness, because this is what we experience in deep sleep. Even because you know you experience
Oh, but
dreams.
I mean, sometimes we experience dreams. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't wake up after going to sleep remembering 8 hours of blankness. I go
No,
to
I don't.
sleep and I'm
Yeah,
not here, and then all of a
exactly.
sudden I'm here again.
No,
And
yeah,
then
you're
it's
not here.
I dream. Yeah, I dream, and then
Hmm.
if I remember the dream, I kind of have a blankness that I can't remember, and then I'm mid dream, and then I wake up from the dream. But
Yeah, but
there is this almost non-being state, or it feels like it's non-being, or it
yeah,
doesn't. It just feels like nothing.
it feels like nothing because there is nothing to be aware of. But the thing is, for me, I can only speak on my personal experience. Is that I'm aware of dreams, and I am aware I had a blank state. So if you're aware that you had a blank state, you were aware. You just have nothing to recall on to say, "Oh, this was what I was aware of." You understand what I'm saying?
Mm.
So the
Nothing for
awareness,
memory to get his mitts onto.
exactly. You can't. You don't have nothing to grasp at to point to. So there is awareness. Awareness never sleeps, and that's what I think. Even Revelations, where it talks about the kingdom of God and God's light shines. There is no need of the sun. It's this light that never sleeps. You say you sleep, the body sleeps, the mind sleeps because it turns off after you have a so-called dream. But that eye of awareness never sleeps. It's always aware. Even if there's a blank,
Yeah.
even if there's blankness, it's aware. It just can't. It just has no recollection to grab onto anything to say I'm aware of that.
Or the memory faculty in the brain can't. It's not
Red.
designed, or it's not made, or it hasn't evolved to deal with nothing. It's just
Yeah, but
evolved to deal.
but the thing is, I have woken up and said, no, I had no dream. You understand? At times, I didn't dream last night. So if I know I didn't dream last night, it was something that was aware that no, it didn't have a dream last night. You understand what I'm saying?
Mm,
Give me
yeah,
one second. Go ahead.
I mean that could just be that you don't remember any dreams because the brain produces. Because I think dreams could be produced by the brain. That's a possible theory for where they come from. And it because our normal everyday experience is kind of produced through the brain. You know, light goes in through the eyes, it goes to the back of the head, and then the brain creates this simulation,
Hmm.
and that's a screen. And it could be that the brain is like a kind of receiving kind of thing for experience, for awareness, what awareness is doing on the outside of it, to screen it back to the awareness that's present at the back of the brain or the back of the mind or something.
Give me one second. I gotta get my daughter off the toilet. Hold on.
Cool. I need to go to the toilet too. I've been drinking too much water and Red Bull. Oh, I get my food. My food. My food. Back.
Yeah.
Cool. Got myself some gammon.
All right. Now, as we were saying, you said you believe it's the brain that produces. See, what the
I mean, there is a
what was
lot
you
of
gonna say?
there is a lot of kind of evidence for it. Like like the thing, all the nerves, they go up into the
Yeah.
brain, and so the brain kind of and they travel to the brain at different rates. And what the brain does is it syncs them all together. So it brings in all the like the touch senses, in the smell senses, all the five senses, and then it creates a kind of simulation which gives the illusion that you're experiencing like taste and sight at the same time. But they travel
You're
and
breaking
process
up a
at
little
different
bit.
rates. Ah. But they kind of travel and they're processed at different rates. And so the idea, I mean, so the idea that we're consciously controlling ourselves and interacting with the world, and another way of showing that that's false, is that our experience of the world, there's a bit of lag. There's a time between where, when the senses are input, when this thing happens, and when we experience it.
All right, you broke up a little bit, so I couldn't understand most of what you were saying. But I'm not doubting that science has evidence for how you see the world. The world comes into the optic nerves, and the nerves, flip the picture flips in the brain and all that. But what I'm saying is all of experience, I wouldn't say comes from a brain. The brain creates nothing. I say what I say, even because I hear this a lot from scientists, is that the brain creates consciousness, but nobody has ever opened a brain and found consciousness in it.
Mm.
Nobody has ever opened a thought and found the thought in it. Okay, but
That could be because you used story of the snake earlier on going through a hole in the fence,
mhm,
and if you like cause and effect, there's a mystery within cause and effect, right? It's why does a specific cause a specific effect?
mhm,
David Hume, he talked about this. He called it the induction problem. How do I know that the future is going to be like the past? All I have to go on is the past, and how do I know that it's going to be like that? The future is going to be like that,
mhm,
and we don't. We eat bread, right? And it gives us nourishment. We don't know how it gives us nourishment. They've got a theory which talks about how sugars get turned into ADP or adenine triphosphate, and then how that powers the cells. But how does adenine triphosphate power the cells? And then they talk about how it kind of causes a kind of turning motion in certain parts of it. But how does a turning motion give power to the cell? There's always, because they're talking about separateness, and because in our mind they're truly separate, there is a
uh-huh,
chasm between our thoughts, and there is a chasm between the cause and effect, and so we kind of take it on faith that this cause will continue to have the same effect in the future as it did in the past. It's like, say you got a snooker table, and say you'd never had any experience of physics, and you didn't know what was going to happen. You say you'd had no experience of what was going to happen when one ball hit another ball, and you were asked, "What do you think is going to happen?" You could come up with many different answers. You could think that when that ball hits the other ball, they'll both just stop dead, or when that ball hits the other ball, the sun will explode. The only way you have of knowing what's going to happen is by running the experiment. And only after you've experienced the events happening do you know that that will happen. But you don't know why it happens the way it does. It's like
Mm-hmm.
science is discovering these laws in nature, right? And
Mm-hmm.
discovering is the operative word there. So take the law of gravity, which just says that objects of mass attract each other. And the law of gravity was, as Newton put it forward, was the inverse square law, which just meant that the closer these objects of mass are to each other, the stronger they attract. But you
Mm-hmm.
asked him, what is gravity? And he'll go, it's a force. And he'll go, okay, then you've just given me one word that I don't know the meaning of to try and explain another word I don't know the meaning of. What is this
Mm-hmm.
force which is pulling these things together? And Newton would say, I don't know. All that I know is through observation that it happens. I
Mm-hmm.
spotted a pattern, and I don't know why that pattern is that way.
Mm-hmm.
So the brain could produce consciousness, but we would never know it does because there is this chasm between cause and effect. And all that we can say is like, say if I open your brain up and I manipulate certain parts of it, you'll say to me, "Oh, I see colours," or you'll say to me, "Oh, I feel pain," and it's like but you would, but unless I had you to tell me what you experienced, I would never be able to tell what was happening when I was messing around in the brain.
Yeah, I understand that. But
Mm.
another way to look at it is that consciousness doesn't only reside in the brain. For instance, plants do not have a brain, but I have rarely seen plants being conscious. They will be this way, and if the sun is this way, well, I wouldn't say have a brain. Did I say plants don't have a brain, but they have consciousness? They're aware. So if the sun's over here and the plant's leaning this way, it will slowly throughout the day creep towards the sun. You understand? Not only a plant, but atoms are aware. Atoms attract and repel when they want
Hmm.
to. So they have a form of consciousness, or you know what I'm saying, without a brain. So what I'm saying is the brain, from my own theory, the brain could be a receiver of thoughts, which it could be some type. I don't think it produces them. I think it might be a receiver of them. But the brain is used to have a human experience as far as touch, taste, feel, sight. You know what I'm saying? All these things that you see out in the so-called world. I think that's what the brain is used for, just for to experience the senses. You know what I'm saying?
It's a bit like when you have a child. Um, you're conscious, and you know that when you have sex with a woman, she'll get pregnant and a baby will come out,
Mm-hmm.
and that baby's going to be conscious. But it's like in that process, it's like, oh, what was I going to say? No, I believe what you're saying. I believe that everything is conscious because consciousness seems to be like the first step that the God or the thing that's playing it makes.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we and I don't think that the consciousness is generated by the brain. I think the brain's just a kind is in a sea of consciousness, and it's a kind of organizing part of that consciousness. And thoughts are part of that are objects, so they could be yeah, thoughts could be created by other objects. So like me and you and a woman are objects. You have sex with each other and you produce another object. So
Mm-hmm.
thoughts could be that.
You're breaking up pretty bad.
Is it really bad, is it?
Yeah, because all I heard was you and a person make another object out of all that you said.
Oh, is it because I'm talking too fast?
I don't know. It could be. I don't know.
Mm. Maybe it's a sign from the thing that we should go go on with the Bible reading.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
As then the Lord knew that the Pharisees hear that Jesus is making and baptizing more disciples than John, though to
Hold
be
on. Hold on.
sure,
Hold on. Hold on. Where do you leave off? I thought we were starting chapter 4.
we are, yeah.
Okay, that's what you're reading.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
As then the Lord knew that the Pharisees hear that Jesus is making and baptizing more disciples than John. But what I'll do, this wire on my headphone is a bit dodgy. Can you hear me fine still?
Yeah, I can hear you fine now. You're a little bit distant, but I can hear you. No breakup.
Okay. I'll bring my thing a bit closer. I
Okay.
got I got these Bose headphones, and I got an Apple wire for them, and I got a Samsung, so the microphone doesn't work on the Apple tube. Anyway, as then the Lord knew that the Pharisees hear that Jesus is making and baptizing more disciples than John, though to be sure, Jesus himself did not baptize, but his disciples. He leaves Judea and came away again into Galilee. I mean, Jesus and John they're playing a wonderful game. They're playing that on a you go first, no, you go first kind of thing. You know,
Mm-hmm.
the old when you meet somebody in the hall and you want to let them pass, so you move out of each other's way, but into each other's way.
Uh-huh.
Now he must pass through Samaria. He is coming, then, to a city of Samaria, termed Sychar, nigh the freehold which Jacob gives his son Joseph. Now there was a spring of Jacob's there. Jesus then, weary with the journey, was seated thus at the spring. It was about the 6th hour. This is another awesome kind of expression of Jesus' attitude to the law.
Mm-hmm.
A certain woman of Samaria is coming to draw water. Jesus is saying to her, "Give me a drink," for his disciples had come away into the city that they should be buying nourishment. The Samaritan woman, then, is saying to him, "How are you, being a Jew, requesting a drink from me, being a Samaritan woman? The Jews are not beholden to Samaritans." Jesus answered and said to her, "If you were aware of the gratuity, the free gift of God, and who it is who is saying to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would request him, and he would give you living water." The woman is saying to him, "Lord, you have not even a bucket, and the well is deep. Whence, then, have you living water? Not greater are you than our father Jacob, who gives us a well, and he himself drank out of it, and his sons, and what was nourished by him." I mean, he's breaking through separation there, like the separation that was made between the Samaritans and the Jews. He's saying he's breaking through that separation.
Mm-hmm.
Jesus answered and said to her, "Everyone who is drinking of this water will be thirsting again. Yet whoever may be drinking of the water which I shall be giving him shall under no circumstance be thirsting for the eon, but the water which I shall be giving him will become in him a spring of water, welling up into life aeonian." The woman is saying to him, "Lord, give me this water, that I may not be thirsting, nor yet coming to this place to draw." Jesus is saying to her, "Go, summon your husband, and come to this place." The woman answered and said to him, "No husband have I." Jesus is saying to her, "Ideally said you that a husband I have not. For 5 husbands have you had, and now he whom you have is not your husband. This you have declared truly." So she's lied, right? She's lied to him about not having a husband, and then
Mm-hmm.
about her kind of sexual misdemeanors. He's called her out on it, so she must be like, oh no, oh shame, red face. The woman is saying to him, "Lord, I behold that thou art a prophet. Our fathers worship in this mountain, and you say that in Jerusalem is the place where one must worship."
Yeah,
Jesus
let me
is
go
saying,
back. I'm sorry. Let me go back up to where Jesus said, "Everyone who drinks this water will thirst again, but whosoever drinks from the water that I will give will never get thirsty."
mm,
Okay. Again, he's comparing what I see right here, just like he told Nicodemus. He's comparing physical things or natural things with spiritual things. He just said, "The water that I give you, or the water that who drinks the water, the people who drink from this well, they will eventually thirst again." Because as long as you're a seeker, you're gonna keep seeking. Keep seeking and keep seeking. You understand? As long as you remain in the world of things, you'll fulfill a desire. It will go away for a brief time. Another desire will come up. You understand? But once whoever drinks from that water that Christ was given, like I have no more seeking for God. Right now, I'm just playing in life. You understand what I'm saying? There is no more seeking. I have no more thirst.
Amen.
And as
I
I
just leave
grow
that.
and as I grow in this spirit, and when I say grow, it just be more one with it. You understand what I'm saying? Instead of,
Mm.
sometimes falling into the personal experience. Nothing but life will flow out of me and into all things that I observe, to all objects. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I see him um, saying here in that analogy.
I mean, people like us, we put other people at ease with what we say.
Mm-hmm.
It's like I speak to this street preacher, and we totally disagree about most things.
Mm-hmm.
But he's at ease with me. Like I'll sometimes say, "Oh, sorry, I don't mean to be like offensive in what I'm saying, John." He's called John.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't said anything to him personally. I've just talked about what he believes and stuff. And he goes, "Don't worry, Chris. I know your heart." And then it's like we put people at their ease, and by being I like messes externally, we put them at their ease. We give them life and freedom.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Mm. I mean, in that thirsting thing, what you were saying, I'd honestly, deep down, I'd thought that all I needed to be happy, all I needed to, everything I was doing, all my writing, everything was in order to get a long-term sexual relationship. And I thought
Mm-hmm.
that's all I needed. And I got it, and there was plenty of sex in it, but it was like, not it,
Exactly.
it's not it. And I mean,
Mm-hmm.
I ejaculate too quickly as well, like a couple of seconds and it's done. And then it's like, just to qualify the conversation a bit.
Trust me, not only you.
Yeah. See, that's the really thing at it. It's like, oh no, everybody's so perfect, and I'm this miserable mess. And if somebody comes out and goes, "No, I'm a bit of a fuck up. I got a little willy baby or something like that." Oh, not only you, it's fine.
Exactly. I mean, the
Mm,
scriptures say it. All man is under sin. I mean, Paul says it repeatedly.
mm,
No one is righteous, not one,
mm,
because men are a human being by nature is separate. You know what I'm saying? And as long as you're separate, you're gonna have likes and dislikes. What you don't want to do, what you don't do. You know what I'm saying? But that spirit that sees the human being is pure,
hmm
basically. And it's that simple.
And it's fine with you. It's
Yeah.
absolutely fine with you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So the woman said about where the Samaritans worship somewhere different to the Jews. Jesus is saying to her, "Believe me, woman, that coming is an hour when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem shall you be worshipping the Father. You are worshipping that of which you are not aware. We are worshipping that of which we are aware, for salvation is of the Jews. But coming is the hour, and now is, when the true worshippers will be worshipping the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father also is seeking such to be worshipping him. God is spirit, and those who are worshipping him must be worshipping in spirit and truth." I think I got onto that with my vlog on worship today
Yeah, I seen
about
it.
how you can't help but worship him. Like this gammon's well tasty. It's really quite pleasant, and by eating it and enjoying it, I'm worshipping God.
Exactly.
Who
Mm-hmm.
made it? Who gave it the taste?
Exactly.
Who generates the taste in me? Who experiences the taste in me?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think the thing is seeing that is the truth, because I think it's like in the Buddhist saying, or it might be a Hindu saying, there's a saying about the rope and the snake, how the rope could seem to be a snake and people perceive it to be a snake, and that's the illusion. And that's what I see when it says those who worship, because the spirit and the truth are one and the same. You know what I'm
Mm,
saying? The spirit and truth are one and the same, meaning the spirit is the truth. There is no other truth. Okay. And all, like you said, all emanations of that is spirit. Everything looks, you might call it by a separate name like material, but it is spirit as well. But
Mm.
like I said, unless you see that, you're still going to be in the circle of life with ups and downs. You know what I'm saying? Or the tree of knowledge of good and evil. You're going to be still in that realm of suffering, which the human mind and body just are. Because when you think, the thing is, when you suffering comes by thinking you're an individual, right? In this play of life. For instance, say somebody dies that you love. As long as you are, like, for instance, nobody cries if they watch a movie and somebody dies. You understand? They could watch a movie of killing, Arnold Schwarzenegger blowing up places, all these things, but you know it's just a story. So you're still at ease. Even though you might have emotions that are up and down, you're still at ease with the movie.
Mm.
But
And
in
because
this,
you're at ease, sometimes you can cry. Tears will come out,
exactly.
and they're
Yeah,
fun, they're pleasant, and you really feel the emotion because
yeah,
you're at
you
ease.
really,
You let yourself do it.
exactly. You really feel the emotion. But at the end of the day, you know that it is just a story. You know what I'm saying? And not to say Jesus cried. You know what I'm saying? It's not to say you're void of emotion, but because the body, again, the body is going to do what it does and what it's meant to do. You know, but
Mm.
I forgot my point. But yeah, we can go ahead.
Um, the woman is saying to him, "We are aware that Messiah is coming, who is termed Christ. Whenever he should be coming, he will be informing us of all things." Jesus is saying to her, "I am he who am speaking to you." I mean, what a gift is he given to this slut, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's awesome, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
This woman comes on. He shamed her a bit at first, but he pointed out her flaw, and then he's given her this awesome gift. And at this, his disciples came, and they marveled that he spoke with a woman. Howbeit, no one said to him, "Who art thou seeking?" or "What art thou speaking with her?" The woman then leaves her water pot, and came away into the city, and is saying to the men, "Hither, perceive a man who told me all whatever I do. Is not this the Christ?" They then came out of the city and came to him. I mean, it's the idea that he gives this information to the lowly, right? Because
Yeah.
the high, they're far too invested in the world of separation and illusion. It's like in the
Mm-hmm.
world of separation and illusion, you're either getting screwed or you're screwing. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're screwing and you're in that power structure, there's a lot more to lose. So it's a lot harder for you to give it up, and it's a lot harder for you to say, "Oh yeah, this is nothing. This isn't serious." Of course,
Oh,
it's serious. I'm the king. It's
yeah.
got to be
Exactly.
serious. You've got to do what I say.
Mm-hmm.
Right. That's why it's harder for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven than it is for a
Exactly.
camel to go through the eye of a needle.
Yep.
Um, Now, in the meantime, the disciples asked him, saying, "Rabbi, eat." Yet he said to them, "I have food to eat of which you are not aware." I mean, he was starving before when he was at the well, and he had done
Mm-hmm.
this work. And I think what he'd done, he'd outpoured himself a bit, and it relieved him. He was fed by being gracious and loving and given a gift to this slut.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he was doing. The disciples then said to one another, "No one brings him aught to eat." Jesus is saying to them, "My food is that I should be doing the will of him who sends me and should be perfecting his work." Are you not saying that still 4 months is it and the harvest is coming? Yeah. Are you not saying that still 4 months is it and the harvest is coming? Lo, I am saying to you, lift up your eyes and gaze on the countrysides, for they are white for harvest already. And he who is reaping is getting wages and is gathering fruit for life Aeonian, that both the sower and the reaper likewise may be rejoicing. I mean, in a sense, I think that's what we're doing, and that is what pushes us in our videos and what gives us. We start putting the stuff out there and start putting ourselves out there, and it's like a snowball effect going down the hill, and we get more and more energy as it goes along, and we start producing more and getting more and meeting up with people, and it just flows.
Yeah, and I mean, even in this phrase, he says, I mean, he says, there are still 4 months, then come the harvest. Listen to what I'm telling you. Open your eyes and look at the fields, for they are ready for harvest. Basically, he's saying, I mean, he's still talking about the will. His will or his food is to do the Father of the, or do the will of the Father. So what he's saying is, look out at the landscape, man. These people are ready to hear what I have to give them. You know, they're ready to
Mm.
be harvested. And you could look out today by all, like you say, you go to Christian churches. People are seeking for God. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
And they are
In
ready.
the Christian churches, in the churches, I don't think they are. I think they're
Do
playing a power game and a social game.
do you mean the higher ups or everybody in the church?
A lot of the people in the church, not everybody. There's a few sheaves. There's a few grains of wheat amongst the tares, but most of
Yeah,
them are tares.
yeah,
I think if you want to find the people that are hungry for this, it's the suffering, the down and outs, the same people Jesus went to. He didn't. Whenever he went to the temples or the religious places, they stoned him. They did not want to hear what he had to say.
exactly.
But the sluts and the drunkards, they were all ears.
Yeah, and even, I mean, it doesn't even have to be a religious person. Anybody, like you said, who's going through suffering, they would be receptive to it
Mm.
because
And that's why.
you are showing them a new way to see things. You know what I'm saying?
And that's why for me, this thing opened up for me when I was in my deepest pits of suffering, when
Yeah.
I just didn't want to be here anymore, kind of
And
thing.
yeah, and see, for me, I hear that story a lot from people that in their deepest suffering, this is when this thing comes. But for me, I haven't had much suffering in my life. Me, I just had an urge to seek truth. That's all. Whether it be
Yeah,
through history books at one point. So this whole journey of the story of my life, it was just a seek for God. God put something in me to seek for Him. You know what I'm saying? And I eventually found Him. So,
yeah.
I but
No,
I
the
I
truth is a
truly
pathless land.
exactly. So I truly can understand what you're pointing to because I hear that story a lot.
Mm.
That people in their sufferings, that's when they have come to this knowledge. So
Yeah, you're just one of the lucky ones who didn't have to be slapped around the head too many times.
I guess so.
Um, is it? But it, for Lythionian, that both the sower and the reaper likewise may be rejoicing. For in this case, I mean, also we would rejoice in people realizing this, because the more people that live in freedom, the easier it is to live in freedom. The less they're going to be stopping us from doing what we want, and the less we'll stop them from doing what they want.
Yeah, and there's no greater gift to give than that. There's no jewel you can give. There's no amount of money than
Amen,
freedom.
amen, brother. For in this case is the saying true, that one is a sower and another is a reaper. I commission you to reap that for which you have not toiled. Others have toiled, and you have entered into their toil. Now, out of that city, many of the Samaritan. I mean, in that case, there, it's like you didn't bring the person to the point where they were ready to hear what you had to say.
Hmm.
You say it, and you either reap the work of the people that brought them to that point, or the people that caused them to suffer, maybe, or whatever, or caused them to seek, or whatever it was,
Hmm.
or your seed falls on the dry ground.
Exactly.
Now, out of that city, many of the Samaritans believe in him because of the word of the woman, testifying that he told me all whatever I do. As then the Samaritans came together to him, they asked him to remain with him, and he remains there 2 days. And many more believe because of his word. Because besides, to the woman they said that no longer because of your speaking are we believing, for we ourselves have heard him, and we are aware that this truly is the Saviour of the world, the Christ. I mean, he just had to perform one miracle, and that was for the Samaritan woman who told her everything that she did. And the rest of
Exactly.
them just believed because of what he said. And they
Yeah.
probably just, it's his emanation, what he felt like.
Exactly.
Now, after the 2 days, he came out thence and came away into Galilee. For Jesus himself testifies that a prophet has no honour in his own country. When, then, he came into Galilee, the Galileans receive him, having seen all whatever he does in Jerusalem in the festival, for they also came to the festival. Jesus came again then into Cana of Galilee, where he makes the water wine. And there was a certain courtier whose son was infirm in Capernaum. This man, hearing that Jesus is arriving in Galilee from Judea, came away to him and asked him that he may be descending and should be healing his son, for he was about to die. Jesus then said to him, if you should not be perceiving signs and miracles, you should under no circumstances be believing. The courtier is saying to him, Lord, descend ere my little boy dies. Jesus is saying to him, go, your son is living. And the man believes the word which Jesus said to him and went. See, I think there, Jesus, first of all, he might have either be speaking to the Jews as a whole, saying like, oh, if you don't perceive miracles, you won't believe. But then he realized that this man wasn't asking for a sign to believe. He was asking because he believed already, and he didn't want his boy to die.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
I can see that, but I also see that. I mean, that's what a lot of people came to Jesus anyway was for signs, wonders. There's a point, I don't know if we're going to read it in John, where he fed 5,000, and he knew they were just coming to eat, and later on they left. You know what I'm saying? And that's the sign of the world. I mean, you could tell them this, but they still want the things of the world. Just like he wants his boy to be healed, even though his boy's gonna die one day again. You know what I'm saying? Or die. He didn't die there, but he's gonna die eventually. But like he said to the Samaritan woman, I can give you this that lasts forever. You understand what I'm saying?
yeah,
So I see him saying that as well.
definitely. Now, as he is already descending, his slaves meet him, and they report, saying that his boy is living. He then ascertained from them the hour in which he was better. And they said then to him that yesterday, at the 7th hour, the fever leaves him. The father knew then that it was in that hour in which Jesus said to him, your son is living. And he believes, he and his whole house. Now, this again is the second sign Jesus does coming out of Judea into Galilee. The thing, a lot of these Christians who read this, right, they're into like Pentecostalism and that, they will go
Mm-hmm.
out into the streets and they will go up to people offering them miracles. Jesus
Mm-hmm.
offered nobody a miracle. They came to him and asked
Yeah.
every time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind if we cut it off there? I'm quite hungry, and
Yeah,
my mate wants
that's
to see me.
fine. Yeah, I was gonna say the same. So
Cool, man.
it's
Yeah, we'll carry
beautiful.
on from chapter 5 either tomorrow or the next day or whenever.
All right, sounds good, my friend.
Cool, man. Shalom.
All right, shalom.